All right, sit back and let me tell you a tale of the uncanny savage bobber, a mighty beast that threatened resolve of its humble pilot. A tale that will be told throughout the ages. Real quick before we get started, I just wanted to mention that the HobbyView apparel store is open. Show your support for this channel with HobbyView branded shirts, caps, mugs, and more. Just go to hobbyview.myspreadshop.com. What a day! Clear skies and light winds, with classic aircraft overhead, and a nice runway. A perfect day to take the bobber up for a spin. With the engine running smoothly, it was my turn at the pilot station. After one last engine run-up check. Okay, the Savage Bobber. We're gonna take her off and bring her out. We're gonna rates. It likes to taxi. Get partial flaps here. Maybe ball bearings on the wheels works a little too good. There we go. There we go. And she's up. Flaps up. And ticking along. Give it a couple clicks right there. And it's just a nice, easy flyer. Aren't all Cubs? There we go. Couple of clips of trim there. Now it likes a little bit of rudder in the turns. There we go. We got a little bit of a tick. She's on step, coming around. Which way did I take off? This way. All right, let's do a little low pass here. Throttle back. Get a little rudder. There, it's like a Cub. Those big bulbous wheels. Power is okay with this motor. It's a 35cc RCGF. This is about as much as you're gonna get for a climb. It's a lazy flyer. Don't look for a 3D plane. So it is capable of some aerobatics. Let's do a loop here. Should come right up and over. We'll do a stall turn, kick the rudder over. The rudder is quite effective. Goes to the left, let's go to the right. Tail skid a little bit. Easy on aerobatics, just no side fuselage, so fly it through, don't horse it around. We'll do a roll. There's a roll. It'll do it, give it time. I'm gonna come around, drop the flaps, kind of give it a, see what it does at low speeds. There's partial flaps. Slow it down, there we go. Pulling some up elevator, some up. That left wing drops a bit. That was partial flaps, so watch for that. Let's try full flaps. There's full flaps. A little bit of ballooning with full flaps. There's that, do some up. Some up, there's that left wing again. Like to drop that left wing, so it will slow down, but it's not a traitor. But it's not hard to fly either. Go for another low pass here. It's also one cool looking model.
A bit of a slip. Try a little bit of a knife edge, see if it'll do it. Oh, yes. Whoa, yo. Yeah, don't knife edge it. It did not like that. Almost went into a snap.
Oh, you want me to turn around?
Yes. Probably do a good snap roll, though.
And here was something else it didn't like.
Wow.
Oh, no. Oops. Oops.
Doesn't look too bad.
I crashed it.
Well, that's not how you do it.
What are your thoughts on the walk of shame?
Well, that was interesting. I got into a bit of a spin. I knew I was gonna full opposite rudder. It would not come out. It was basically in a flat spin.
I thought you were doing that on purpose.
No.
I was like, that's a pretty impressive flat spin.
The damage was even more impressive. This was certainly not my finest hour. Did I ask too much of the bobber? Just how will I explain this to the insurance company?
Well, this certainly won't buff out.
Oh, man.
It was a very long walk back to the pits. I decided to do a quick damage assessment before heading home in shame.
Well, that's a sticky wicket. Well, canopy, broken prop, as you expected. The landing gear torn all to pieces. Struts, really not that bad. It looks like the airframe itself is pretty much maybe undamaged. I'm not quite sure. Oh no, look, it might have been bent slightly. Tail kind of hit relatively flat, but it was coming down. And you've got 20 pounds of coming down. And of course, the wing spar is not much of a spar anymore. So metal frames are quite durable. Wings not so much, and the wood parts. Oh well. So that was an example of I just did a snap roll. Looks like I got into a flat spin and I just couldn't get it out. It just got in it and it stayed. Full opposite deflection on the rudder and it still said, nah, I think I'm coming down. I like those deer over there. I want to say hi to them. I wonder if they'll be my friends.
Back in the workshop, it was a come to Jesus moment.
I'm sorry. It wasn't my fault. It was wind shear. I had a radio lockout. I got distracted. Locusts. Yeah, locusts. Well, to quote a famous philosopher, it's a fine mess I've got myself into this time. Things happen, and I think we have the technology. We can rebuild her. Don't think it'll quite cost $6 million, but it will take some time and some little thoughtfulness. But this should be interesting, seeing that it's a hybrid balsa wood metal aircraft. So it's going to be a little different than some of the stuff I usually try to repair. So I'm going to have to swallow my pride and see how I can fix her. All right, one of the first things you'll notice is I have removed the cowl, and it's a little worse for wear, but believe it or not, I think once I clean it up and probably add some little bit of sanding and some touch-up paint, I think it'll be actually quite workable again. The rest of the plane is not as fared as well. Mainly, we've got some pretty heavy structural damage here, and the top wing, I guess wing box, I guess you could almost say, where we got that split, looks like, from the wood, and looks like maybe relatively clean break, but it has some big splits. Some cross members have broken. Some of the one of the subspar here is cracked. Here we go. You can see the little crack there. The canopy. This canopy, which gave me so much trouble in the build, is not usable anymore. So I have to get a replacement one of those. Some of the spars are broken loose, but they're probably just simple to glue back. And of course, the landing gear is pretty well sprayed apart. That and it's sprayed and broken. I don't think I'll even try to rebend that. I'll just probably try to get a whole new landing gear. It looks like the cowl firewall section has bent up slightly from the rest of the main fuselage. But the good thing is the rest of the fuselage looks just fine. The tail is just fine. The tail wheel is just fine. Saddlebags are just fine. Servos doesn't really look like it hurt anything. Even the servo mount, I don't know if you can see that in there, looks okay. So hopefully some little elbow grease and some trepidation can get this thing back in the air. Of course, the wings have suffered some damage too. I'll get to those later. Right now I'm going to focus on the fuse since that seems to be most of the heavy damage. And we will go from there. All right, so I think the first thing I'm going to do is remove the undercarriage. I think it's just going to get in the way for now, and it's all banged up and stuff. So let's pull this apart here. I got my trusty, got the wrong bit here. Yeah, that. And maybe one more. There we go. Maybe I should have charged it before I started. The batteries. Oh well, guess I'm gonna have to do it the old-fashioned way. Oh, my wrists are getting cramped. So, last thing's off. Gear is off. Look at that. Oh, that's so sad. But maybe it is a blessing in disguise. Maybe the landing gear took the brunt of the force and absorbed most of the energy. So maybe that's a good thing. I'll have to take the wheels off of this thing too. Alright, take off this vestige of a canopy window here, windscreen. Looks like the frame got bent back when it got bent off of the edge of the thing. So I'm going to need to bend the frame back. There we go. Alright, let's see if this works. That's solid, so I can bend it back. Oh, there we go. Oh. Kind of working. There we go. Yeah, that's the ticket. All right, I think that worked. Hi, Kiba. Well, I do declare that's it. Yes. Huh. I think I knew my own strength. Well, I don't have any strength, but anyways. All right. All right, so the gap we saw before is now gone. It did a pretty good job rebending that back. I'm really happy. That's pretty close. Very close. Glue it back in, and it'll be good. Okay, so I'm not sure how clear it is in the camera, but I noticed looking at it head on that the frames here are bent slightly to the right. Close one eye and see what it is. So this one definitely is bent in this way. So I'm going to have to try to push. I think I might just try to push the top. I'll keep the tail clamped in and maybe just push the top over and see if that works. Gotta hold this and push. Yeah, it is noticeably better. Yeah, because now it doesn't look so bad. Now I'm going to kind of look at these wing root pieces here, and one thing when you have a crash is always try to save all the pieces, and that way you can sort of fit it back together kind of like a 3D jigsaw puzzle. And so this one has a few pieces, not a lot of things that were split apart, but I've got some things here. It's kind of delaminated some things, but what I'm going to try to do is sort of relaminate everything together. It's going to probably take some clamping and some integration of all these pieces back into one homogeneous unit, I guess we could say. So this is interesting. You look at the construction, and it is sort of a combination of balsa wood and ply laminates, and so it got pretty well beat up. But my whole goal is, let me take this little piece out here, put this aside in a second, is I'm going to try to see if I can slide everything back together Just pieces here. I don't expect it to go back together perfectly, but enough for me to try to glue it all back together to serve as the mounts for the wing roots. So right now I'm just doing a test fit to see if there's anything that really stands out. And at least on this side, I think it looks pretty good. I can slide everything back together. And this one, the other side too as well, looks fairly decent. Looks like a couple pieces might got a little bit off. And look around the other side here. And take a look. See if there's also anything out of the ordinary. I think I can make that work. It looks like, I don't know if a piece moved up or what. Some things kind of buckled a little bit, so I'll have to carefully put things back together. So what I'll do is I'll use epoxy, some slow setting epoxy, get that all wicked up in there good, and then use some clamps, clamp everything together, and I think that will give me what I need. It's gluing time! The nice thing about epoxy is it takes up the gap and the spacing, so I'm not worried too much about little minor pieces. So I'll just kind of mix this in there, get this all in there with extreme prejudice. Could probably almost pour it in there. Just get it all wicked in, all the nooks and crannies. You're not doing it right unless you get epoxy on your hands. And again, nice thing about 30 minutes, I got plenty of time to work with it without it curing too quickly. You do not want to do this with 5-minute epoxy. It's amazing. What would we do without epoxy or glue? Just simple things in life. Alright, it's enough. Alright, shove that down in there. In there. Squeeze that. I got some clamps. So we're going to start clamping everything together. Put them down a little more. Do a clamp here. There we go. Clamp it tight. Oh, look at that. Got some stuff squeezing out after I did that. That's good. It's good. No, it's a good joint. I see glue squeezing out. Putting some glue on the clamp, so I have a sheet of parchment paper here. I'm going to put a piece of parchment paper and a clamp right over this joint. I've got plenty of these suckers. That's why I have a lot of them. Get all those pressure points. It's kind of like clamp acupuncture. Yeah, this guy's looking lonely. Stick one there. Alright, I'll double check this over, look on the other side, and we will let that set up. I went and did the other side as well, and I let it all cure overnight. So I'm going to take off all this stuff. I used practically all the clamps I had for this, just to make sure everything was clamped really well and straight. And there's some more stuff that didn't stick. That didn't work pretty well. And this looks to be pretty good. It's pretty strong. Thinking it's looking pretty straight. Like that. I'm going to hit on slight roughness where things didn't quite key in perfectly, but close enough. So I might hit it with some sandpaper or sanding block or something to smooth everything down and then repaint it black. Again, it's mainly cosmetic. There's some things that kind of slide in. Again, I can slide these in and glue them. It's mostly done. I got to put some new pieces on it, some landing gear, and touch up some few things. I think, yes, I think the next step is I'm going to take a look at the wings and see how those look and see everything matches up pretty good. So let's see how that works out. Alright, so we have the wings here, and as you can clearly see, the struts took brunt of the force here. Same thing with this one, a little better. Only one strut has this issue here. Just broke there. Yeah, we got this got kind of obliterated. So this is going to take some repair to fix this wing. I'll see what kind of damage is in the spar and whatnot, or the ribs. I think this one, other than the struts, I think survived pretty good. See, in there's a little bit of, there we go, right there. You can see just a little, I think I can patch that up externally. Yep, I think one of the first thing I'm going to do is take the struts off and go to digging around in the wing, see what kind of damage is in, and see how I can fix that up. Struts away! That might be stripped or broken or something. Cut away on the covering. I'm going to have to replace this covering, so I want to make it so it's easy to patch. It's be interesting to see inside the wing structure too. Right, so the whole bait is gone. Nice and easy. I can see right in there, and there's bits and pieces of stuff. Okay, so damages, you know, kind of significant, but not terrible. There's these little, I don't know what you want to call these things, guides for the wings, for the wing tube. Kind of moving. This got kind of discombobulated, so let's move these out of the way here a little bit. Somewhere. There we go. So, just like with the fuselage, I'm going to try to move it to its correct position, sort of rebuild this kind of 3D puzzle best I can, and then glue it back into place. For ease of reconstruction, I'm probably going to use CA on this wing rib instead of epoxy. Alright, well, I was going to use thick CA, but I don't seem to have any more thick CA. I must have used it all up in my last building project. So I'm going to use some medium CA from Starbond. And if you look in the video description below, you'll see that I actually have discounts for Starbond adhesives. And so go take a look at their website and you'll find some pretty good discounts on some really fine glues. I even did a review on it some time ago. But anyways, so I am going to have some kicker too from them. Use some medium CA and kind of get this rib back into position. So I can start working on the other parts of it. So we're just going to hold it down and throw some glue in here. Alright, let's throw a bead down here. And a bead over on the spar. More beads of stuff. Double tip, triple tip. Ah! Don't! Slipped off. Let's throw some kicker on it. This little thing got moved over. I think I can push it into place. Yep, there we go. Slide that right back into place. Throw some glue in there. Slide it into place. So, since this is kind of beat up, I'm going to take a piece of scrap plywood that I cut out and glue it in there to help reinforce this rib here. So I'm going to use some more of my, get it all in there, and stick that in there. Alright, so I'm going to start installing these little guide tubes. I don't even know what they are. Drip of glue there. Drip glue there. Alright, so the reinforcements are all glued in there and the little guide tubes are in. Just do one last final check. Everything goes in quite nicely. Alright, so I also should mention that I contacted Legend Hobby and they have replacement parts for me that I was able to get from them. Replacement covering. Replacement decals. No mystery there. Canopy windshield. A new cowl. And of course replacement undercarriage. Nice, nice, nice. It's like rolling. Replacement wheels. Unpack. Nice. The wing struts and wing tubes, it says. Right, because yeah, one of the wing tubes was damaged. Okay, we've got replacement wing tubes, wing struts. Look at that. Complete set replacement wing struts, including the little triangle things and some screws and stuff. So, all right. I am a happy puppy. I think that looks like everything I needed. Everything and more. Alright, I've run out of excuses. It's time to seal this thing up. But let's take some of the covering. I cut out a nice sheet. Hopefully this is the right size. Okay, backing. Yep. All right. So I've got my trusty soldering iron, covering iron. We'll tack down the edge here. Corner there. Stretch and pull the section there. All right, one last touch up with the heat gun. I love this little thing. This is kind of a handheld heat gun for shrink tubing and stuff, but it looks great for spot work on covering. Tighten right up. And she's patched. Undercarriage back on. Okay, I can't resist. Before I finish for tonight, I'm going to do a test fitting of the wings to see how well they fit back on the newly restored fuselage as well. What's in there? Hey, that doesn't look too bad. The top and the bottom, and then the nut. Under there. Okay, I'm really encouraged by this. This is looking really good. I think this will work. Again, just some minor stuff. I need to, of course, put the windshield back on. I will do that later. And put the wheels back on. And some little touch-up, maybe some sanding. And, of course, I gotta fix the cowl. The cowl is still not in good shape, but everything else is looking really good. Alright, I think I'll look at the cowl now, as it's going to need some help. And I've got a new cowl, but I wonder if I can restore this one. It'd be interesting to try to find out. So first thing I need to do is kind of clean it up. It's all kind of poor bobber's been playing in the mud. Just looking for where the major defects are. So right here is a major crack, and here is a little thing on the side. Piece this together. Again, kind of like a puzzle. A little more durable, some transparent tape. Stick that on there. Just kind of tape this up, mainly just to get the pieces to stay together while I go in and reinforce them. Alright, I'm going to cut some strips of fiberglass cloth. Not too concerned about the size, just as long as they're strips. Start fiberglass on the inside. I'm going to kind of rough up, sand it up a little bit. Normally I use some finishing resin, but my finishing resin is in bad shape and I'm too lazy. I don't want to wait to go to the hobby store, so I'm just going to use some 15-minute epoxy. And a mixing cup. Again, it's all going to be on the inside of the cowl, so it's not a big deal about sanding it and that kind of stuff. So I'm just also going to thin it a little bit with some isopropyl alcohol. And we'll just start laying some fiberglass sheets down. I think I'll start with a relatively large piece. Neat thing is once you paint it on, it becomes transparent. Paint that on and just layer it up in layers. Paint it like happy little trees, happy little pieces of fiberglass. And we'll just keep layering it up. And okay, so while the cowl is curing, and it's going to take overnight, so I'm going to set it aside and work on something else. Something that has been bugging me about post-crash analysis is I think the CG was much too far back on it. I only had like one little nose weight, and some other things I was doing while I was flying. I realized, you know what, I don't think the CG was good, so I'm going to add some more weight. I like to use these little fishing weights I get from the local sporting supply store. And these are little 4-ounce ones. I drill a hole through the center and just bolt them onto the firewall. So I've got a bunch of them. I'm trying to weigh, just doing some bench testing. I also have a scuba diving weight. This looks like a little belt buckle, and this also I can bolt to the firewall. So I'm thinking about. I need roughly. This is maybe a little on the heavy side. This is 1 pound, and I think I can get a little less. I don't want to add too much weight, And so I think with these, I can be just under a pound, maybe about 10 ounces or so, 10, 12 ounces. So I think I'm going to try to mount these first, and I think I'll get where I need to be with it, with the batteries and everything else on it, versus kind of overkill with the 1 pound. But I'm wavering, but I think I'll try these first, see how that works. I need to drill some holes in my little fishing weights here. These things are just lead, so just drill on slow. There we go, right through it. There we go. All right, so I got that part. Now, of course, I got to mount it to the firewall here. So I will drill a hole for that. All right, I decided to go 3. Three's company, I guess. Anyways, so I think this will be a good starting point. Turns out my screws weren't long enough to stack them, so I just did 3 separate holes, and whatever. You're not going to see it with the cowl on anyway, so. I think that will do it. I think everything else looks good. I just still need to clean. I got some schmutz here in the some of the head, so I just need to go over everything with a fine tooth. Look at that. Yeah. Okay, now the cowl's had time to cure. Actually, it's been a couple days till I got to it, and so one of the first things I want to do is kind of get off this tape, but just peel that off. What I can do is I can start trimming. Trim all this extra fiberglass away from the opening here. Opening here too. There we go. Alright, so the next step is, now that I've got the reinforcement fiberglass in there, I'm going to take my trusty little sander here, and I'm going to sand away, try to smooth out over some of the cracks and that kind of stuff. It's probably not going to be perfect, but at least it'll give me a nice start working surface, get some of the old paint off, kind of get into the cracks, just to kind of get in there and smooth things out and run them over before I repaint it. And this is a neat little sander. It actually uses replaceable sandpaper. It's on by Velcro. It's kind of neat, and I have different grits. I'm going to start with a fairly fine grit. This is 220. I do have some 120, and I thought I might start with it, but it seems a little really abrasive. So I'm going to see how the 220 does first, and if it seems not enough, then I'll go to the 120. But at any rate, I'm going to make some noise. Alright, after sanding with a couple different grits of sandpaper, it's starting to look pretty good. I think you can see it's looks kind of a mess, but I've really smoothed out a lot of it. But even so, I can tell that there's some spots that are you know, there's no way I'm going to sand. Either the clear coat has peeled off or cracked, and just some divots and indentations. So what I'm going to have to do is just basically fill some of these cracks with some more epoxy on the outside, and then sand that, and then I think I can prime it and then paint it. So what I'm going to use to do that is I'm going to use something called micro balloons. This is great little stuff. You mix it with the epoxy, and it kind of, they're literally like little tiny glass balloons, if I remember correctly, and it sort of acts as a filler, and it also makes the epoxy easier to sand. And so I'll add some micro balloons, mix up some epoxy, set it in there into the gaps and cracks, and let it set, and then sand it a little more, and then hopefully it's presentable enough to paint. Squeeze them in there. Equal mix micro balloons. Now they say 3 to 1, so I have to eyeball it. You can see it as I pour it in there. This little white stuff. It kind of gives it a milky texture. Just put it on a little bit roughly and then let it and we'll just do that all over the various parts. Alright, so let it cure overnight, and I've got all this kind of epoxy goo all over the place, so let's get to sanding. I think that'll do it. Well, let me do a little touch-up first with some elbow grease. Okay, I'm going to paint it with some black automotive duplicolor paint. Now, technically, I should prime it first, but I'm going to see if I can get away with painting it without priming it. So I'm going to spray it with some generic black, I think they called it, or something black for everything. I don't know. Anyways, it's nothing fancy, just black. So let's see how this works. Instructions say a couple of light coats, so I'm going to give it one light coat here. Looks like it's covering not too bad, actually. Alright, doesn't look too bad. It's not perfect, and I might actually sand it a little bit before I put the next coat on. At least it gives me an idea of where I need to sand. What I'm going to do is let that cure for about 10 minutes or so, and then put some more coats on it. But I think that'll work. I think that'll look just fine. Okay, so after a few coats of paint, including a little bit of light sanding between one or two of the coats, just to try to fill in some of the weave. I guess in hindsight, I probably should have put some of that filling primer in it, because some of the weave on the fiberglass was showing through a little bit. But I think I've touched it up enough, and actually I'm quite happy with it. It looks really good, actually. You know, from close inspection, you might see a little bit of some minor imperfections. You can see them in the reflection, but it is far, far better than it used to be. Now, I probably could have just cloned this with the new cowl in the same amount of time it took me to repair it and that kind of stuff, but I just wanted to get an exercise in repairing a fiberglass cowl, and I think I'm quite happy. It's looking good. I'm really happy with this duplicolor paint. This is actually the first time I've used this. I usually use other paints, and I saw a lot of people prefer this brand. This is an automotive paint, and it worked really quite well. With this is not the paint, that's the clear coat. Here's the paint. And it went on really well, dries really quick, actually. It was within 10 minutes or so, I was able to do some sanding on it and apply another coat. So I think I'll start using some of this in the future for other fiberglass projects instead of some of the other stuff. I think we can call this done. Last thing I need to do is just re-glue on these dummy engine cylinders onto the sides. This is the first time the cowl has been back on since the incident, and it's pretty good. Okay, one quick note. I went to take the wheels and nuts off the old landing gear, which, as I mentioned before, is not in really any condition to be repaired. It's mangled pretty good. And I noticed that they made a change. The old spindle for the axle, I guess you could say, for the old landing gear is 5 or 6 millimeters, and it's quite obviously that they went upscaled on the new one. Now it is like 8 millimeters. So that means the old wheels won't fit. But fortunately, I did get a pair of new wheels. I didn't notice, but the bearing is noticeably different in size. Much bigger bearing to go on it. So I can't use the old wheels. I gotta slide on the new wheels, which is what I was about to do. Slide suckers on. And fortunately, I've got a box of nylon lock nuts that have an 8 millimeter size. I can stick that on there, and we'll put the wheels on. And at that point, I think it will be pretty much ready to fly. First thing I'll do is crank her up, make sure the engine's running good, and I will be doing some flying with the restored and rebuilt Savage bobber. Yeah.
One thing I wanted to change was to add differential throws to the ailerons. This means repositioning the servo horns off center so that I naturally get more up movement than down. It wasn't a huge difference in movement, but this should help improve the stall characteristics of the wing. Next was seeing if the engine suffered any ailments. Well, that's encouraging. To my delight, she seemed to be running just fine. I should note that I went down from a 20-inch prop to a 19-inch prop for less inertia. The cockpit looked a little too empty, so I recruited Lord Vader for pilot duties. It's a figure I've been looking for a use for some time. I thought the slightly sinister look of the bobber was a perfect match. A long zip tie keeps the Sith Lord in place.
Perhaps a touch on the small side, but it will work for the newly refurbished Savage Bobber.
All right, as the famous line goes, round 2, fight. So we've got the newly rebuilt Savage Bobber. I've checked her out, run the engine up a little bit, and I think she's ready to go. This is got a little bit of trepidation here. First flight after the rebuild, and I think we're all looking good. We've got Lord Vader here in the cockpit. Hopefully the Force will help us this time, and if not, then I have the Sith to blame. And don't know what else to say other than that. Let's rock.
But it was great to see the Bobber back at the field in flight condition. The first taxi test was not quite as dignified as I would have liked.
Jeez. We'll start it here. Whoops. That tailwind got me.
When in doubt, blame it on the wind. This time, I was ready. I just needed to make one last trim adjustment.
Ah, dang it. Oh, come on.
But the engine had other ideas.
Oh, come on. What the hell?
It seems I had serious engine trouble.
All right. Oh, you're kidding me. Let me turn this off.
Out of frustration, I decided to quit for the day and troubleshoot back home. I eventually sorted out the issue. It turns out the low end had become much too rich and needed adjustment. I eventually had it purring like a kitten. Now, to get her airborne.
Savage Bobber, ready to bob or Savage? We shall see. Do a control check. Yeah, right, left, up, down. All right, turn around.
It was even taxiing better with the lower idle.
And a little left here. Here we go. Okay, that wasn't supposed to happen.
Does this plane hate me? I was so close to getting airborne.
Dang it. My fault, not quite on the rudder. I was forcing it off. Should have let it get up on step a little more. Ah. Oh. Looks like I damaged the landing gear, kind of bounced off. Now, fortunately, this doesn't look too difficult. This is easy to fix, but that was pilot error.
What did you do? I couldn't tell.
Well, first of all, we got 90-degree crosswind today, and I probably should have done into the wind a bit more instead of crosswind like I was doing. I let go of the rudder, and it just sort of just kind of yawed off. So it was, like I said, totally pilot error on my fault.
Here we go. Got it.
This plane does not like me. It's okay.
This is the second time we're carrying her home, huh?
Yes, but I'll get it.
One day it'll fly.
One day it'll fly.
One day, indeed.
I will reign supreme over it one day.
You shouldn't have put Vader in there.
Yeah, the Force was weak with this one.
You shouldn't have.
Oh, shouldn't have put Vader.
Yeah, Lord Vader failed me.
This is becoming a bad habit with me. Fortunately, the repair should be quick and easy. The bottom gear plate tore off, so I'll need to remove the undercarriage before gluing it back on. With the gear off, it was a simple matter of slobbing epoxy into all those loose and open bits. Then hold it in place with my signature clamps. Hello, old friends. Once the glue cured, bolt everything back on. Tailwheel and control arms are screwed back into the wood mounts after filling the stripped holes with epoxy. While I was at it, I reworked the springs to give more tailwheel control. Back at the field, it wasn't quite bright and sunny, but the winds were right down the runway. I also made a point to add a few extra clicks of right rudder trim, hopefully to keep it out of left field. At least no engine starting issues this time. That's encouraging.
All right. All right. Round 3 fight, I guess. I can get her to turn around here. Come on, baby. All right. We're gonna do no flaps. Got a little bit of right trim on the rudder. See how she does.
Will this be the success I need?
There we go. Little rudder foo there.
Yeah, I guess I had a bit too much rudder trim.
And she's up.
Finally, success!
What does it need? Needs a little bit of up trim. A little bit of left trim. There we go.
Yeah, let's take out all that right trim, shall we?
And she's up and cruising. Still needs a little bit of trim. You feel a little bit of nose weight. There we go. Maybe a little too much rudder trim. Take some of that out. She's flying. Flying pretty good.
The new smaller prop seems to do well enough.
There we go. I think Lord Vader would be pleased. There we go. I think the trim's finally sorted itself out a bit. Let's bring her down for a couple of low passes.
I was starting to feel that the Savage Bobber was back in top form. All I needed was some flying music.
Dun, 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 dun. Da, 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 da.
I also could relax and really admire the unique lines and structure of the bobber as it flew by.
There it is. It's flying pretty good. It's definitely a plane you fly on the wing. You can't horse it around. Gotta really just lazy, relaxed flying.
But there was one last thing I couldn't help but do.
I want to try one thing, and we will call it a day. Can I do it? Can I do it? Can I do it? Up and over, baby, up and over. Yeah! Success, my lord.
Structural integrity confirmed.
We're gonna drop one notch of flap, see what it does. Not bad, okay. Bring in for a slow pass.
Even with just partial flaps, the bobber could loiter around at a fairly slow tick without feeling mushy at the controls.
Very nice. That shot cub is back, baby.
Verbal flubs aside, could it be that the bobber and I have finally come to an understanding?
I have you now. All right, we're gonna drop one notch of flaps.
That's as long as I treat her with respect, she will continue to allure me with her charm and not faceplant herself.
2 notch of flaps.
And with that, it was time to bring her home.
hopefully in one piece.
Bring her in. There you go. Oh, look at that. Yes. Oh, my throttle's a little high. Throttle it down. There we go. New engine, still breaking it in. Wait, there you go. The force is strong with this one. And that, folks, is how you finally do it. After all the trials and tribulations, never give up, never surrender, live free or fly. I got you, baby. Savage Bobber from Legend Hobby. Man, what an adventure. Now, it's normal that each model has its own distinct characteristics, but this one has a bit more character than most. Now, I think the main problem may be that the CG, as stated in the manual, is probably about a ½ an inch or maybe 10 millimeters further back than it should be. With the changes I made, it's a nice flying model, but note, it's not one for more than very basic aerobatics. Now, the real Bobber is a relaxing, slow-flying, light sport bush plane, and his model is pretty much the same. A distinctive model for lazy circuits around the field and shooting touch-and-goes no matter how rough your field is. And now I look forward to flying it some more.
Hi, thanks for watching. Please take a look at the video description below for special HobbyView sales and discounts. Your purchases help support this channel. Happy modeling!
Speaking of finally found a plane you're scared of.